Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command. And I wanted to talk to you about the role that Star Trek and Twilight Zone have played in my life and the great perks that we're offering in our new Kickstarter campaign relating to those two wonderful, iconic shows. Now, I'm very, very lucky. I'm like the luckiest kid on the planet because the three shows that made me want to be a writer were the original Twilight Zone, the original Star Trek, and the original Outer Limits. Now, when I was a kid, I noticed that a lot of the writers whose names were appearing on those shows were also writing the science fiction books that I was reading at the time. Guys like, let's see, Harlan Ellison, and, Ted Sturgeon, and on, George Clayton Johnson, and Rod Serling, and Charles Beaumont and Richard Matheson, and it just kept going on and on and on. I mean, here's a novel by Richard Matheson, one of the great Twilight Zone and Star Trek writers of all time. And so I became fascinated with these writers, and I decided to write a book about the Twilight Zone as soon as I got out of college. And that's the book right behind me, and that's a model of Rod Serling next to a book he wrote, The Twilight Zone Companion. And so I started writing that book when I was 21 years old, and Rod Serling had only been gone for 2 years, so I contacted his widow, Carol Serling, and Rod's house was exactly as he'd left it. Even his Irish setter was there, the 6 Emmys were there, the 3 Hugo Awards. There was one room just for all the awards he won. And upstairs in the attic were these scrapbooks with every article ever written about him. In his garage were 16mm prints of his Twilight Zone episodes with the original commercials, the original coming attraction spots, uncut episodes. Many of these prints had never been put through a projector, and I would carry them home like, in stacks like this and watch them on my 16mm projector. This is before Twilight Zone was available on home video, and it was just a revelation. The book came out after 5 years. It took 5 years to write. I interviewed over 100 people, all the producers from the show, the major writers who were still with us. The only ones who were gone were Charles Beaumont, Rod Serling, and a writer-director named Montgomery Pittman. Everyone else was still with us. So I interviewed, Douglas Hayes and Richard Elbert, the directors, on and on, Alvin Ganzer, the actors, Anne Francis and Billy Mumy and William Wyndham and Ross Martin and Burgess Meredith and Buck Houghton and William Frug and all these great producers who'd worked on the show, and these brilliant, the cinematographer, George Clemens, who was just an astonishing man and incredible talent, and George Clayton Johnson and Richard Matheson. I got to interview them, and I became friends with a lot of these writers and directors and producers and actors. They became friends. We had a party when the book came out. We had a big party with the Twilight Zone cake, and Carol Serling came, and George Clayton Johnson, and George Takei, and it was just an amazing time. And so I'm the world's leading expert on the Twilight Zone. Every home video version of the Twilight Zone I've either written or produced or both. So for instance, on the Twilight Zone Blu-ray, I do 52 episode commentaries. You can listen to me talk for 30 hours. Eventually I'll do the remaining 104 episodes that I haven't done the commentaries on. Watch this space. Eventually, when I have the time, I'll do them. But Twilight Zone, I'm the world's expert on the subject. I can watch almost any episode of the Twilight Zone, and before any of the characters talk, within less than a second, I know which episode it is. And it's just encyclopedic. And so we're offering stuff from my Twilight Zone collection as perks. We're offering, then also when they brought Twilight Zone back in the 80s, the late 80s, where they had Harlan Ellison, George R.R. Martin, Alan Bennett, Rockne O'Bannon, an amazing writing staff. I wrote a script for that the censors yanked a week before it was going to be directed by Doug Hayes, the great director of the original Twilight Zone, and so that's available for you guys to read. There's just a ton of very cool Twilight Zone stuff. There's an archive of rare Twilight Zone photos from my collection, many of which have not seen the light of day or been published ever. All this cool stuff. I'm working on a new Rod Serling project called Rod Serling's After Twilight with a number of my friends, and currently talking to the Serling family and Rod's agent who represents the estate. But beyond that, there was Star Trek. Now, Star Trek debuted when I was 10, and it had a huge impact on me. I recorded it on reel-to-reel audio tape in case it never aired again, because when I was a kid, they didn't have VCRs, they didn't have recorders, they didn't have downloadable content where you could watch it whenever you wanted. You watched it when it aired, and it might never air again. You might never see it again. So I was astonished by that show. It was hugely influential in me. That Halloween, I went out as Spock, and no one knew who Spock was at that time because the show had just debuted. So they were saying, "Are you the devil? What are you dressed as?" "No, I'm Mr. Spock." So, and but then I got to meet Nichelle Nichols through a boyfriend of my mom's who knew her. She was very gracious, and we just filmed her in Space Command all these years later. I showed her my Star Trek albums that I collected when I was a kid, of articles and all these things that no one has seen in over 50 years. And you can get a copy of those albums that Nichelle Nichols signed that includes her letters to me, her signed photos. Just these are reproductions of everything in there. There's articles about all of your favorite Star Trek actors. There's photos of them. There's just tons of cool stuff. And I got to go on the set for the last episode, Turnabout Intruder, when I was a kid. And Majel Barrett was on set that day, and as was DeForest Kelley and Shatner. And I remember that the actor who was the guest star, he was supposed to, his line was, "Dr. Lester has been under my supervision for 5 years," and he could not say supervision. He kept saying superstition, and went on and on and on. And a stagehand said, "Last show of the season," and I heard Majel Barrett under her breath say, "Last show ever." And the irony, of course, was she then married Gene Roddenberry, became Majel Barrett Roddenberry, and I recorded her as the voice of the Enterprise computer for World Enough in Time, which is the Star Trek episode with George Takei that I did. You can also watch in its entirety here on Mr. Sci-Fi. But just an amazing, amazing experience. And so Star Trek was just influential. I read The Making of Star Trek when I was 13, and then went on to sell the story First Contact to Star Trek The Next Generation, and then I did Far Beyond. I came up with Far Beyond the Stars, which is, of course, one of the great episodes of Deep Space Nine. And in fact, you can even see my name is there, Mark Scott Zickrey. This is the novelization by Steve Barnes, and very proud of that episode. And it just I'm part of Star Trek lore now, and a lot of the Star Trek actors, all the Star Trek writers became friends and mentors. D.C. Fontana, Harlan Ellison, Theodore Sturgeon. I was a mentor when I was a teenager. Richard Matheson, George Clayton Johnson. I mean, amazing. I met Roddenberry. I actually, saw him when I was working on Next Generation. He was around, and so just really amazing memories. And you can share some of these as part of our Kickstarter campaign. You can get my Star Trek volumes. There's a Star Trek crate with all sorts of scans of material that I got from Star Trek. Tons of stuff. And we're even including pitches I came up with Star Trek that didn't get made. And you can see what I was going to do with Data and Geordi and all these different great characters. And now we're continuing on with Space Command is very much in the tradition of Star Trek. I think of it as very much in that vein. And we have so many other great Star Trek actors. We've got, Armin Shimmerman and Ethan Phillips and Robert Picardo, and it just goes on and on and on. I mean, these amazing, amazing, phenomenal actors. And I'm so honored to be able to know them and work with them. And so Star Trek and Twilight, and then with Outer Limits, a lot of the same writers. It was Harlan Ellison and Jerry Soule and Joe Stefano, who wrote and produced the show, and then I later worked with him on Swamp Thing. And I feel so honored to have been shaped by these phenomenal science fiction shows that were so meaningful, and then got to work with these brilliant men and women, and got to work on Star Trek and Twilight Zone and now Space Command. So you can get many of these wonderful items through our Kickstarter campaign, and wonderful digital and physical perks. And that's the only place you can get them. They're not available anywhere else, because these are from my personal collection and my personal history. So that's about it for now. But I feel such gratitude to Rod Serling and all my other dear friends. And I'll show you something fun. This is Harlan Ellison. There's a collection of his books right there, and it's just these were incredible, brilliant people, and they had their hearts in the right place. They were compassionate, they were kind, they paid it forward, and and they made me who I am today. So thanks for being part of this amazing adventure, and thanks for loving the same things I love. Take care, guys. Talk soon.